This will be the third part of Chapter 12, and I will be focusing on the point at which we start with the steps to develop the promotional plan. As you can see on this slide, it's like all the other tools that we've talked about, that in order for a marketer to actually implement a promotion plan, they do go through a step-by-step process. And as always, I'm not going to ask you to memorize this step-by-step process, but I would like you to know about the steps as I talk about them on these following slides. First of all, marketers can't do anything without knowing who their target audience is, and that is always the foundation of any planning for marketers. The next slide shows an important concept called the hierarchy of effects. And if you look very carefully at this, starting from the lower left-hand corner, you will see that the communication objectives that go in a sequence from creating awareness of the product among the target audience, knowledge about how the company's product is positioned against competitors, desire for that product, which is either a willingness to try the product or a favorable attitude, to the actual purchase, and then long-term loyalty. You will see that those 5 steps correspond directly to the steps in the consumer behavior purchase decision. Recall from Chapter 5, those 5 steps were problem recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase, and then post-purchase evaluation. What we see here is that marketers use a variety of promotion tools to move customers through those steps in a very coordinated sequence. What you see on the bottom part of the blue line are simply illustrative examples, and every company will use different tools to accomplish those objectives. But the fact is, all customers have to move through this hierarchy, going from awareness to purchase to post-purchase evaluation. At the University of Montana, we talked about this on Wednesday, May 1st in class, when we discussed how would people know if the new brand campaign is working. And we said that you couldn't jump directly to evaluating the brand campaign based on an increase in enrollment, because the brand campaign itself is designed to operate more at the front end of creating awareness, knowledge, and desire. And we'll be doing that through using a variety of social media tools. The next slide emphasizes that all companies have a particular budget that they are able to spend on marketing communications. And that budget does limit what's feasible and what's not feasible. I will not ask you to review the specific budgeting techniques, whether they're top-down or bottom-up. All marketing students will learn these techniques when they take their integrated marketing communications class in their program. And otherwise, I would just like you to know that all promotion plans are constrained by budget realities, like is true for everybody in their lives. Companies must decide on what marketers call a push or a pull strategy. Push versus pull strategies are important marketing terminology that you must know when you leave this class. Please draw a supply chain on your notes, where remember the supply chain goes from the producer of the good to the consumer. You could use, for example, the computer-friendly stuff supply chain that we've used so frequently in class, or you could use any company who goes through a retail distribution channel. You know, one of you will probably draw a supply chain for Sears, another maybe for grocery stores. Push strategies focus the marketer's communication efforts on the next immediate level in the distribution channel. So, for example, a company would heavy up on trade promotions and personal selling in their promotion mix, with the goal of getting retailers to place orders and stock up on inventory. That's a very different promotional strategy than a company who uses a pull strategy. A pull strategy is when the manufacturer spends a large proportion of their promotion budget targeting the end users of the product with their marketing messages. A pull strategy would rely heavily on traditional media rather than trade advertising, and a pull strategy would rely heavily on consumer sales promotions rather than trade promotions. This push versus pull strategy, of course, is a measure of degree, and it's reflected in the budget allocation. What percent of the budget goes to focusing on the channel members compared to the actual users. And it reflects a company's philosophy about marketing. Companies that are very sales-oriented tend to use a push strategy. Companies that are very marketing-oriented tend to use a pull strategy. Step 4 is where the company actually looks at what is the appropriate mix of the promotion tools to be used. And we've already covered these tools in the first part of this chapter. Finally, we have this important step of how do marketers assess the effectiveness of their communications efforts. And as in all the tools we've talked about in class, this return on marketing investment is probably most important when it comes to advertising and public relations. And the reason it's most important is because those tools are probably hardest to evaluate in terms of effectiveness. So I would like to just review briefly, how do marketers know if their advertising is working? I would like you to go back to our discussion of how will the university know its brand campaign is working. We talked about that in terms of assessing brand perceptions, both before the campaign and after the campaign. With the Super Bowl, we talked about the number of hits that a company might get on its website. With respect to public relations, we might look at the number of positive articles that are written in the press about a company. The important point here is that before a campaign starts, the plan should include specific measures to evaluate effectiveness, because without that, companies are potentially wasting their money. The final slide in this chapter deals with an important concept called multi-channel promotion. The word multi-channel essentially means combining a variety of online tools with traditional tools. And this concentrated, coordinated campaign of combined tools is considered best practices marketing today, and companies tend not to use one in isolation of the other. The more common place that marketers use this word, multi-channel marketing, is actually in the combination of retail distribution with distribution through online channels, and that is called multi-channel marketing. And I will talk about that when I record your information for distribution. That will conclude this particular slideshow for the end of Chapter 12.